I've always been drawn to the woods. There's something about the way the trees stretch up into the sky, their branches tangling together like they're holding secrets, that pulls me in. It's where I go to clear my head, to shake off the noise of life. Back in the fall of 2022, I needed that escape more than ever. Work had been a mess, layoffs looming, deadlines piling up, and my personal life wasn't much better. A breakup had left me raw, and I'd been dodging calls from friends who didn't know how to talk to me anymore. So I packed my gear, threw it in the back of my old Jeep, and headed out to a place I'd heard about from a coworker, Black Hollow State Forest. It's a sprawling chunk of land in the Midwest, not too far from where I lived, but remote enough to feel like you're dropping off the edge of the world. The drive was uneventful, just me and the hum of the engine, the radio cutting in and out as I wound deeper into the hills. Black Hollow wasn't a big tourist spot, no fancy campgrounds or marked trails, just dense forest and a few dirt roads that barely qualified as paths. I liked that. It meant solitude. I found a spot about a mile off the main road, near a small stream that gurgled through the underbrush. The trees here were old, their trunks thick and gnarled, moss clinging to them like a second skin. I set up my tent in a clearing, just big enough for me and a fire pit. The air was crisp, heavy with the smell of pine and wet earth. It was perfect. The first night was everything I'd hoped for. I built a fire, cooked some canned chili on a little camp stove, and cracked open a beer. The stars were sharp overhead, no city lights to dull them, and the only sounds were the crackle of the flames and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. I felt the tension of the past few months start to melt away. I even pulled out my journal, something I hadn't touched in weeks, and scribbled down a few thoughts by the firelight. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, like the forest was holding its breath. I woke up the next morning to a gray sky, the kind that promises rain but doesn't deliver. I spent the day exploring, following the stream deeper into the woods. I found an old deer trail and tracked it for a couple of hours, snapping pictures on my phone of the scenery, twisted roots, a hollowed out log, a patch of mushrooms glowing orange against the brown forest floor. I didn't see another soul, not even a squirrel or a bird, which struck me as odd but not alarming. By the time I got back to camp, the light was fading, and I was ready to settle in for another quiet night. That's when things started to feel off. I was stoking the fire, adding a few more sticks, when I noticed my phone buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. "Nice spot you picked," it read. I froze, staring at the screen. I hadn't told anyone where I was going, not my coworkers, not my ex, not even my parents. I figured it was a wrong number, some weird coincidence, and typed back, "Who is this?" No response. I shook it off, chalking it up to spotty service playing tricks, and tossed another log on the fire. But then it buzzed again. "Looks cozy," the message said. My stomach twisted. I stood up, scanning the trees around me. The clearing was small, maybe 30 feet across, and the forest pressed in tight on all sides. I couldn't see far, the firelight didn't reach past the first few trunks, but I felt exposed, like eyes were boring into me from the dark. I grabbed my flashlight, a heavy-duty one I kept for emergencies, and swept it around. Nothing. Just shadows and branches swaying faintly in the wind. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a prank, someone guessing I was camping. I muted my phone, shoved it back in my pocket, and sat down, trying to focus on the fire. An hour later, I was halfway through a second beer, trying to relax, when I heard it snap, sharp and deliberate, like a branch breaking underfoot. It came from the direction of the stream, maybe 50 yards off. I grabbed the flashlight again and pointed it that way, the beam cutting through the darkness. I didn't see anything, but the sound had been too distinct to ignore. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin against the vastness of the woods. No answer. I waited, listening hard, but all I heard was the stream and the fire popping behind me. I figured it was an animal, a deer or a raccoon, and forced myself to sit back down. Then my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. Another text. You should have stayed home. My heart started pounding. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. Someone knew I was here. Someone was watching me. I stood up, flashlight in one hand, my pocket knife in the other. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. Who's out there? I shouted, spinning in a slow circle, the beam shaking as it darted between the trees. The forest stayed silent, mocking me with its stillness. I don't know how long I stood there, waiting for something to happen, but eventually I crawled into my tent, zipping it shut like that flimsy nylon could protect me. I kept the flashlight on, pointed at the door, and clutched the knife in my lap. My phone sat next to me, screen dark. I didn't dare check it again. Sleep was out of the question. I just sat there, listening to every rustle, every creak, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it my ex, bitter enough to follow me out here? A coworker, pulling a sick joke? Or someone else entirely, someone I didn't even know? Around midnight, I heard it again, footsteps, slow and heavy, crunching through the leaves. They were closer this time, circling the clearing. I clicked off the flashlight, plunging the tent into darkness, and held my breath. The steps stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing. Then a low whistle cut through the silence, not a bird call, not anything natural. It was human, deliberate, like someone signaling. My blood ran cold. I tightened my grip on the knife, debating whether to stay put or make a run for the Jeep. Before I could decide, my phone lit up with another text. I couldn't help it. I looked. It was a photo, my tent, taken from maybe 10 feet away, the fire glowing faintly in the foreground. Below it, a single word, night. I bolted upright, unzipping the tent and stumbling out into the clearing. Get the hell away from me, I yelled, swinging the flashlight wildly. The beam caught something, a flicker of movement, a shadow darting between the trees. It was too fast to make out, but it was there. I didn't think, I just reacted. I grabbed my keys from the tent, kicked dirt over the fire, and ran for the Jeep, half expecting something to grab me from behind. The footsteps started again, faster now, crashing through the underbrush, but I didn't look back. I reached the Jeep, fumbled the door open, and peeled out, the tires spitting gravel as I tore down the dirt road. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station an hour later, my hands still shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again as I sat there under the harsh fluorescent lights. Another photo, the clearing, empty now, my tent still standing, the fire smoldering. No text, just the image. I deleted it, blocked the number, and drove straight home, not even stopping to sleep. When I got back to my apartment, I locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob, and sat up all night with the lights on. That was 2 years ago, and I still don't know who was out there. The text stopped after that night, and I've never gone back to Black Hollow. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a local messing with me, or some creep who saw my Jeep and decided to have fun. But deep down, I don't believe that. Whoever it was, they wanted me to feel hunted, and they succeeded. I don't camp anymore. The woods don't feel safe. They feel alive, watchful, like they're waiting for me to slip up again. Sometimes, late at night, I'll hear a whistle outside my window, low and faint, and I'll wonder if they followed me home.